The cargo vessel Starfall was burning. Park Yuna could smell the smoke before she opened her eyes. Her head hurt. Her body hurt. Everything hurt. She was hanging upside down, held in place by her safety straps. Red emergency lights flashed all around her. Alarms screamed in her ears. She remembered now. The asteroid field. The captain shouting. The terrible sound of metal breaking. Then darkness. Yuna reached up with shaking hands and pressed the release button on her straps. She fell hard onto the ceiling of the ship. The vessel had flipped completely. She lay there for a moment, trying to breathe, trying to think. She was the medical officer on the Starfall, a small cargo ship with a crew of 8. They had been carrying supplies to a mining colony on the edge of known space. It was supposed to be a simple job. Easy money. No danger. The galaxy had a dark sense of humor. Yuna pushed herself up. Pain exploded in her right leg. She looked down and saw blood. A piece of metal was sticking out of her thigh. Her medical training kicked in automatically. The metal had missed the major artery. If she removed it now, she would bleed too much. She needed to leave it in until she could properly treat it. She crawled through the broken ship, calling out names. Captain Bay, Engineer Minho, Navigator Suman. No one answered. She found them one by one. The captain was crushed under fallen equipment. Minho had been thrown through a window. Suman's neck was bent at an angle, but no living person could survive. All dead. All of them. Yuna was alone. She made her way to the emergency supply area. The cases had broken open, but she found what she needed. Medical kit. Emergency food packs. Water bottles. A thermal blanket. A small emergency beacon. She activated the beacon first. It sent out a signal. A call for help. But she knew the truth. They had crashed on Kella 7, a frozen moon far from any shipping routes. It could take weeks for anyone to find her. Maybe longer. She looked through a crack in the ship's hull. Outside, she saw only white. Snow. Ice. A terrible blizzard was raging. The temperature reading on her broken console showed -50 degrees. The ship's power was failing. Soon, it would be as cold inside as it was outside. She had to move. Yuna used pieces of metal to make a basic splint for her leg. She wrapped it tight with bandages. Then she pulled on every piece of warm clothing she could find. 2 jackets. 3 pairs of pants. Gloves. A hood. She packed supplies into a bag and strapped it to her back. Leaving the ship was the hardest thing she had ever done. The wind hit her like a wall of ice. She could barely see 3 steps ahead. The snow was deep, reaching up to her knees. Every step sent pain shooting through her injured leg. She gritted her teeth and kept moving. She walked for what felt like hours. In truth, it was probably less than one. Her body was failing. The cold was eating through her clothes. Her fingers were numb. Her face burned from the freezing wind. Then she saw it. A dark shape in the white. A cave opening in a rocky hillside. Yuna stumbled toward it. She fell twice. The second time, she almost did not get up. But something inside her refused to die. Not here. Not like this. She crawled the last few meters and pulled herself into the darkness of the cave. The wind stopped. The silence was almost painful after the constant screaming of the blizzard. Yuna lay on the cold stone floor, breathing hard. She was alive. For now, she pulled out a small light from her pack and looked around. The cave was large. The ceiling was high. The walls were covered in ice crystals that sparkled like diamonds. And in the corner, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Eyes. 3 pairs of eyes, glowing in the darkness. Yuna's hand went to the small knife on her belt. It was her only weapon. She had never been a fighter. She was a healer. but she would not die without trying. The creatures moved forward into the light. Yuna's breath caught in her throat. They were Vorn. Every human child grew up hearing stories about the Vorn. They were the most feared predators in the galaxy. Adult Vorn stood 3 meters tall. They had 4 powerful legs, sharp claws that could cut through metal, and teeth designed to tear flesh from bone. They were killing machines. Entire planets had been abandoned because Vorn lived there. But these were not adults. These were cubs. Small, perhaps the size of large dogs. Their fur was dark blue, almost black. Their eyes were golden. They looked thin, weak, hungry. And behind them, in the deeper shadows, Yuna saw a larger shape. An adult Vorn lying on its side. Not moving, dead. Yuna understood. This was a mother and her cubs. Something had killed the mother. Maybe the cold. Maybe sickness. Maybe something else. The cubs were orphans now, alone. Starving. The smart thing to do was leave. Find another cave. The cubs might be small, but they were still Vorn. They could still kill her. But Yuna did not leave. She looked at the cubs. They looked back at her. They were shivering. Their golden eyes were full of fear. They were just children, lost and afraid and hungry. Yuna thought about her little sister back on Earth, about how she used to cry when she was scared, about how Yuna would hold her and sing to her until she felt safe. Slowly, carefully, Yuna reached into her bag. She pulled out an emergency food pack. The cubs tensed. One of them made a low growling sound, but they did not attack. Yuna opened the pack. It was dried meat. Emergency rations designed to keep humans alive. She had no idea if Vorn could eat it, but she had to try. She held out a piece of meat toward the nearest cub. For a long moment, nothing happened. The cub stared at her. Its nose twitched. Then, slowly, it moved forward. It stretched its neck and took the meat from her fingers. It chewed. It swallowed. The other 2 cubs came closer now. Yuna fed them too. She gave them all the meat she had. When it was gone, she leaned back against the cave wall, exhausted. The cubs did not leave. They stayed close to her. One of them, the smallest, crept forward and lay down beside her leg. It was warm. So warm. Yuna closed her eyes. She was injured, alone, and trapped on a frozen moon with 3 predators that were supposed to want her dead. But somehow, she did not feel afraid anymore. She started to hum an old song, a lullaby her mother used to sing. The cubs' ears perked up. They listened, and slowly, one by one, they fell asleep around her. Yuna smiled. Maybe she would die here. Maybe rescue would never come. But tonight, she was not alone. And for now, that was enough. The first week was the hardest. Yuna had to remove the metal from her leg. She had no choice. The wound was getting infected. The skin around it was red and hot. If she did not act soon, she would lose the leg. Or worse, she waited until the cubs were asleep. She did not want them to see her in pain. She bit down on a piece of cloth, grabbed the metal shard with both hands, and pulled. The scream that escaped her lips woke the cubs. They jumped up, golden eyes wide with alarm. The biggest one, a male with a white patch on his chest, rushed to her side. He sniffed at her leg, at the blood pouring from the wound. Yuna worked fast. She cleaned the wound with the little medical supplies she had. She stitched it closed with shaking hands. She wrapped it tight with bandages. Then she lay back, tears streaming down her face, and tried not to pass out. The cubs stayed close. The smallest one, a female with a scar on her ear, licked Yuna's hand gently. The third cub, another male with darker fur, pressed his warm body against her side. Yuna laughed weakly. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm okay." I'm going to be okay. She did not know if that was true, but she wanted to believe it. Days passed. Then weeks. The blizzard outside never seemed to stop. Yuna made the cave into a home. She dragged the dead Vorn mother to the back of the cave and covered her with stones. It felt wrong to leave her in the open. Even predators deserve some dignity in death. The cubs watched her do this. They understood, she thought. They knew she was honoring their mother. After that, they trusted her completely. Yuna gave them names. Human names. Simple names. The biggest male with the white patch, she called Haru. It meant day in the old Korean language. He was always the first to wake up, always ready to face whatever came. The smaller male with the dark fur, she called Duri. It meant 2 or second. He was quieter than his brother, more careful, always thinking before acting. The little female with the scarred ear, she called Bomi. It meant spring. She was the gentlest of the 3, always wanting to be close to Yuna, always seeking warmth and comfort. The cubs learned their names quickly. When Yuna called Haru, the big one would look at her. When she called Bomi, the little female would come running. They were smart, much smarter than Yuna had expected. She talked to them constantly. She told them about Earth, about blue skies and green trees and oceans that stretched forever. She told them about her family. About her mother's cooking and her father's terrible jokes and her little sister's laugh. She told them about her dreams, about wanting to see the whole galaxy, about wanting to help people, about wanting to matter. The cubs listened. They could not understand her words, but they understood her voice. They understood her tone. They knew when she was sad and when she was happy. They knew when she needed comfort and when she needed space. Her leg healed slowly. Yuna made a better splint from bones she found in the cave. Animal bones, left by the Vorn mother. She learned to walk again, one painful step at a time. The cubs walked with her, always nearby, always watching. And then they started to hunt. It began when Haru disappeared one morning. Yuna panicked. She called his name over and over, but he did not come. She thought something terrible had happened. She thought she had lost him, but hours later, he returned. He was dragging something in his mouth. A creature Yuna had never seen before. It looked like a rabbit, but with 6 legs and blue fur. It was dead. Haru dropped it at her feet and sat back, looking proud. Yuna stared at him. Then she started to cry. She hugged him, burying her face in his fur. He was warm and solid and alive. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, Haru." After that, the cubs hunted every day. Sometimes they came back with nothing. Other times they brought enough food to last for days. They always gave the best pieces to Yuna. They ate what was left. Yuna learned to cook the meat over small fires. She had found some dry wood in the deeper parts of the cave. The cubs did not like fire at first. They were scared of it. But they learned that fire meant cooked food and warmth. Soon, they would lie near the flames, sleeping peacefully while Yuna sang her lullabies. She sang every night. Old songs from Earth, songs her grandmother taught her, songs she had heard on the radio as a child. She did not have a good voice, but the cubs did not care. They loved the sound. Bomi would close her eyes and make a low rumbling sound in her chest. It took Yuna weeks to realize what it was. Purring. The little predator was purring. The galaxy feared the Vorn. Everyone knew they were monsters. Killing machines with no feelings, no emotions, no soul. That is what all the stories said. That is what all the scientists believed. But Yuna knew the truth now. The Vorn were not monsters. They were just animals. Intelligent, dangerous, yes. But capable of love. Capable of loyalty. Capable of kindness. They had saved her life. Without them, she would have died alone in that cave. Frozen or starving or both. But they had kept her warm. They had fed her. They had given her a reason to keep fighting, and she loved them. She loved them like family. 8 weeks after the crash, the rescue ship came. Yuna heard it before she saw it. The roar of engines cutting through the sky. She ran out of the cave, ignoring the pain in her leg, and waved her arms at the ship descending through the clouds. The ship landed 100 meters away. Soldiers poured out, wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons. They had come prepared for danger. Callus 7 was Vorn territory. Everyone knew that. The cubs followed Yuna out of the cave. They stood beside her, watching the strange machines and the strange creatures inside them. The lead soldier stopped when he saw them. His face went pale. He raised his weapon. "Get away from her," he shouted. "Step back slowly." Yuna did not move. She stood her ground, her hand resting on Haru's head. "Put your guns down," she said, her voice calm and clear. "They are not going to hurt anyone." The soldier stared at her like she was crazy. "Those are Vorn. Do you understand what Vorn are? They will kill you. They will kill all of us." "They saved my life," Yuna said. "They are coming with me." There was a long silence. The soldiers looked at each other, confused and scared. The cubs growled softly, sensing the danger. Finally, the lead soldier lowered his weapon. "This is insane," he muttered. "But fine. You are the only survivor. We will take you back to the station. But those things," he pointed at the cubs, "they are your responsibility. If they hurt anyone, it is on you." Yuna nodded. "They won't hurt anyone? I promise." She walked toward the ship. The cubs followed her without hesitation. They climbed aboard the vessel, ignoring the terrified looks from the soldiers. They lay down at Yuna's feet and closed their eyes. As the ship lifted off, Yuna looked down at the frozen moon that had nearly killed her. She thought about the crash, about the long, cold nights, about the pain and the fear and the loneliness. But she also thought about warmth, about golden eyes in the darkness, about 3 small creatures who had given her everything. When she had nothing, she smiled and stroked Bomi's fur gently. She was going home. And she was not going alone. Orbital Station Haven was the largest human outpost in the outer systems. 50,000 people lived and worked there. Scientists, engineers, miners, traders, soldiers. It was a city floating in space, a hub of commerce and research. Ships came and went every hour, carrying goods and people to all corners of the galaxy. When the rescue ship docked, a crowd had gathered at the landing bay. Word had spread fast. A survivor from the Starfall had been found, and she had brought something with her. Something impossible. Vorn. Living, breathing Vorn. Yuna stepped off the ship, blinking in the bright lights of the station. After weeks in the dark cave, everything seemed too loud, too bright, too much. The cubs walked beside her, pressed close to her legs. They were nervous. She could feel it in the way they moved. The crowd gasped. Some people screamed. Others ran away. Armed guards rushed forward, forming a wall between Yuna and the crowd. A man pushed through the line of guards. He was tall and broad, with short gray hair and a stern face. His uniform marked him as the station commander. His name was Lee Tayo. He stopped in front of Yuna and stared at the cubs. His hand rested on the pistol at his hip. "Are you Park Yuna?" he asked. His voice was cold. "Yes, sir." "And these are Vorn?" "Yes, sir." He was silent for a long moment. Yuna could see the thoughts racing behind his eyes. Fear, anger, confusion. She had seen the same look on the faces of the soldiers who rescued her. "You know what Vorn are," he said finally. "You know what they do. They are the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. They have killed thousands of people. Entire colonies have been destroyed by them. These are cubs, Yuna said quietly. They are not killers. They will be. When they grow up, they will be just like every other Vora. It is in their nature. Yuna looked down at Haru, Duri, and Bomi. They were watching the commander with wary eyes. Their bodies were tense, ready to fight or run. But they stayed still. They stayed calm. Because Yuna was calm. With respect, sir, she said, you are wrong. Nature is not everything. I have spent 2 months with them. I know them. They are gentle and kind and loyal. They are not monsters. Commander Lee's jaw tightened. I have orders to contain any Vorn found in this sector. They will be caged and sent to a research facility for study. Yuna's heart stopped. For a moment, she could not breathe. She imagined Haru locked in a cage, scientists cutting him open to see what was inside. She imagined Bomi crying out, alone and scared, not understanding why Yuna had abandoned her. No, she said. Her voice was louder now, harder. You will not take them. This is not a request, Park Yuna. This is an order. Then I refuse your order. The crowd went silent. Even the guards seemed shocked. No one refused the station commander. No one. Commander Lee stepped closer. He was a full head taller than Yuna. He looked down at her, like she was an insect he could crush with one hand. You are a civilian. You have no authority here. You will do as you are told, or you will be arrested. Yuna did not back down. She had faced death on Kella 7. She had crawled through a blizzard with a piece of metal in her leg. She had survived when everyone else had died. She was not afraid of this man. The cubs stay with me, she said clearly. Or I walk out of here right now. I will take them back to Kella 7 if I have to. I will die there if I have to. But I will not let you hurt them. The commander stared at her. She stared back. Behind her, Haru growled. It was a low sound, deep in his chest. A warning. The guards raised their weapons. Yuna held up her hand. Ara, stop. The growling stopped immediately. Haru sat down, his golden eyes never leaving the commander. Commander Lee watched this happen. Something changed in his face. Not respect, exactly, but something close to it. Curiosity, maybe. Or confusion. They obey you, he said slowly. They trust me, Yuna corrected. There is a difference. A long silence followed. The crowd watched. The guards waited. The whole station seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Commander Lee sighed. Fine, the Vorn stay with you. For now. But there will be rules. They will be confined to the medical wing. They will not be allowed near civilians. And if they hurt anyone at all, they will be put down. And you will be held responsible. Yuna nodded. They won't hurt anyone. I give you my word. Your word means nothing to me. Actions are all that matter. He turned and walked away, his boots clicking on the metal floor. The guards parted to let Yuna through. She walked into the station, the cubs following close behind. People watched from doorways and windows. She could feel their fear, their hatred. To them, she was a fool. A crazy woman who had brought monsters into their home. But Yuna did not care what they thought. She only cared about keeping her family safe. The medical wing became their home. It was a large area with white walls and bright lights. Doctors and nurses came and went, always keeping their distance from the cubs. They treated Yuna's leg, which had started to hurt again. The infection had returned. She needed stronger medicine, maybe surgery, but she refused to leave the cubs alone. Every time a doctor suggested she go to the surgical ward, she shook her head. Later, she always said, I need more time. The cubs grew. They were adolescents now, almost the size of wolves. Haru was strong and proud, always standing guard at the door. Duri was clever, figuring out how to open cabinets and find hidden treats. Bomi was sweet, following Yuna everywhere, sleeping at the foot of her bed every night. They learned the rules of the station quickly. They did not chase people. They did not growl at workers. They stayed in the medical wing, as they were told. They were perfect, but Yuna's health was getting worse. The infection spread up her leg into her blood. She started getting fevers. She had trouble walking. Some nights, she could barely get out of bed. The doctors warned her that she was running out of time. If she did not have surgery soon, she would lose her leg. Maybe her life, but she could not leave the cubs. She knew what would happen if she was not there to protect them. The commander would cage them. The scientists would study them. They would be treated like monsters, not like the gentle souls they truly were not. So she stayed. She refused surgery. She told herself that she would get better, that her body would heal on its own, that everything would be fine. But deep down, she knew the truth. She was dying. Slowly, painfully, she was dying, and the cubs knew it too. Haru stopped eating. He lay by the door of the medical wing, watching everyone who came near. Duri paced back and forth, anxious and restless. Bomi never left Yuna's side, pressing her warm body against her human, trying to share her heat. One night, Yuna woke from a fever dream. She looked at the three cubs gathered around her bed. They were staring at her with those golden eyes. And she saw something she had never seen before. Tears. The cubs were crying. Yuna reached out and touched Bomi's face. "It's okay," she whispered. "Don't cry. I'm going to be okay." But she knew it was a lie. And they knew it too. She closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. By morning, her fever had spiked to dangerous levels. The doctors said there was no more time to wait. They had to operate now, or she would die within hours. Yuna was too weak to argue, too weak to refuse, too weak to do anything but nod. As they wheeled her toward the surgical bay, she looked back at the cubs. "Stay here," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Be good. I will come back. I promise." Haru howled. The sound echoed through the corridors, filled with pain and fear and love. Yuna closed her eyes and let the nurses take her away. She did not see what happened next. The surgical bay was on the other side of the station. Yuna lay on the moving bed, watching the lights pass overhead. Everything seemed far away. The sounds, the voices, the hands touching her, it all felt like a dream. The fever had taken most of her strength. She could barely keep her eyes open. A nurse walked beside her, checking machines and adjusting tubes. "You are going to be fine," the nurse said. Her voice was kind but worried. "Dr. Kim is the best surgeon on the station. He has done this operation hundreds of times." Yuna tried to smile. "My cubs," she whispered. "Please, take care of my cubs." The nurse looked uncomfortable. "The Vorn? They are in the medical wing. The guards will watch them. They are not dangerous. Please, promise me." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. "I promise." The doors of the surgical bay opened. Inside, bright lights shone down on a metal table. Machines beeped and hummed. A team of doctors and nurses stood ready, wearing masks and gloves. This was where Yuna's life would be saved. Or where it would end. They transferred her to the surgical table. Someone put a mask over her face. "Count backward from 10, a voice said. 10, 9, 8. She was asleep before she reached 7, back in the medical wing. The cubs knew something was wrong. Haru had been pacing since Yuna left. His claws clicked on the metal floor. His golden eyes were wild. Duri sat in the corner, making low sounds in his throat. Bomi lay on Yuna's empty bed, her nose buried in the blankets that still smelled like they're human. When the guards came to check on them, Haru growled. Not a threatening growl, a sad one. A scared one. The guards kept their distance. They had heard stories about Vorn. They knew what those claws could do, what those teeth could do. They were not taking any chances. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. Har, you could not wait anymore. He moved to the door of the medical wing. It was a heavy metal door with a simple handle. The guards had locked it from outside, thinking the Vorn were too stupid to escape. They were wrong. Haru studied the door. He had watched humans use handles before. He had watched them push and pull and twist. His paw was not shaped like a human hand, but he was clever. He pressed down on the handle with one paw, while pushing with his shoulder. The door clicked. Open. Duri and Bomi were already at his side. The 3 cubs slipped into the corridor, their paws silent on the metal floor. They moved like shadows, following a scent. Yuna's scent. The station was busy. Workers walked back and forth, carrying tools and equipment. Soldiers patrolled the hallways. Scientists hurried to meetings. No one expected to see 3 Vorn walking freely through the corridors. The first person to spot them was a young engineer. He dropped his tools and screamed. The cubs did not stop. They did not look at him. They kept walking, following the smell of their human within minutes. Alarms were blaring throughout the station. Commander Lee was in his office when the call came. 3 Vorn loose on the station, heading toward the surgical wing. All security teams were being sent to intercept. He grabbed his weapon and ran. The cubs reached the surgical bay before the security teams arrived. The doors were closed, locked. Through the small window, they could see Yuna lying on the table. Machines were connected to her body. Doctors moved around her, working quickly. Haru pressed his face against the glass. He whimpered. His sister, his brother, his human, she was in there, and he could not reach her. He tried to open the door. He pushed. He pulled. He scratched at the metal. Nothing worked. Bomi sat down beside him and started to howl. It was a sound of pure sorrow. A sound that echoed through the station, making people stop and stare. Duri lay down in front of the door, blocking it with his body. He was not going to let anyone take them away. Not until Yuna came out. The security teams arrived 5 minutes later. There were 20 of them, armed with stun weapons and nets. They surrounded the 3 cubs, forming a tight circle. Commander Lee pushed to the front, his weapon raised. "Stand down," he shouted. "Get away from the door." The cubs did not move. Haru turned to face him. The big Vorn did not growl. He did not attack. He just looked at the commander with those golden eyes. There was no anger in them. Only fear. Only sadness. Only love. "They are not attacking," one of the soldiers said, surprised. "They are just sitting there." "They are Vorn," Commander Lee said. "They could attack at any moment." "Sir, they have been out of the medical wing for almost an hour. They have not hurt anyone. They walked right past dozens of people. They could have killed anyone they wanted." The commander hesitated. He looked at the 3 cubs blocking the surgical bay door. They were not moving. They were not threatening. They were just waiting. A doctor came out of a side door. "Commander, what is happening?" "Vorn," Lee said shortly. 3 of them. The patient inside, Park Yuna. Yes, she is in surgery. It will take several more hours. Her condition is critical, but stable. The commander turned back to the cubs. Haru was still looking at him, waiting. "What do you want?" Lee asked, even though he knew the animals could not understand. But maybe they could, because Haru turned and pressed his nose against the window of the surgical bay. Then he lay down on the floor, joining his siblings. They were not going to leave. "Sir," the soldier said again, "what do we do?" Commander Lee was quiet for a long time. He had spent 30 years in the military. He had fought pirates and rebels and alien creatures of all kinds. He had seen things that would break most people, but he had never seen anything like this. 3. Predators, the most feared killers in the galaxy, sitting outside a hospital room like faithful dogs. Refusing to leave. Refusing to eat. Refusing to sleep. Waiting for their human. "Stand down," he said finally. The soldiers looked shocked. "Sir," I said, "stand down. Lower your weapons. Step back." "But sir, that is an order." The soldiers obeyed. They lowered their weapons. They stepped back. They formed a loose circle around the cubs, but they did not approach. Commander Lee walked slowly toward Haru. The big Vorn watched him but did not move. The commander stopped a few feet away and crouched down, putting himself at eye level with the creature. "You really love her," he said softly. "Don't you?" Haru blinked. Then he put his head down on his paws and closed his eyes. The commander stood up. His face was strange. Something had changed in his expression. Something had broken through the hard shell he wore like armor. "Someone bring food and water," he ordered. "Put it near them. Not too close, just near." "Sir?" "Do it." A soldier hurried away. Minutes later, bowls of water and plates of meat were placed a few meters from the cubs. The cubs did not touch them. They did not even look at them. For 12 hours, they lay there. They did not eat. They did not drink. They did not sleep. They just waited. And when Yuna finally came out of surgery, they were still there, still waiting, still loyal, still refusing to leave. Yuna woke slowly. The first thing she felt was warmth. Not the cold of the cave on Kellis 7. Not the fever heat that had burned through her body. Just gentle, comfortable warmth. The second thing she felt was weight. Something heavy was pressing against her side. Something else was lying across her feet. She opened her eyes. The room was dim. Soft lights glowed on the walls. Machines beeped quietly nearby. She was in a hospital bed, covered with clean white sheets. Tubes were connected to her arms, feeding medicine into her blood. And Haru's massive head was resting on the edge of her bed, just inches from her hand. Yuna smiled. Her throat was dry, her body weak, but she smiled anyway. She reached out and touched his fur. It was soft and warm, just like she remembered. Haru's eyes opened. Golden eyes, bright and alive. When he saw that she was awake, he made a sound. Not a growl, not a howl. Something softer. Something like a sigh of relief. "Hey, big guy," Yuna whispered. "Miss me?" Haru licked her hand. His tongue was rough, like sandpaper, but she did not care. She laughed, and the laughter made her whole body hurt. But it was worth it. Duri and Bomi were at the foot of her bed. When they heard her laugh, they both jumped up. Bomi climbed onto the bed, ignoring the angry beeping from the machines she knocked over. She pressed her nose against Yuna's face and purred so loudly the bed shook. Okay, Yuna said, still laughing. "I am glad to see you too." A door opened. Commander Lee stepped into the room. He looked different. His face was tired. Dark circles hung under his eyes. He had not shaved in days. He looked like a man who had been through a war, but his eyes were soft. Softer than Yuna had ever seen them. "You are awake," he said. Apparently. He walked closer. The cubs watched him carefully, but they did not growl. They had learned that this man was not a threat. Not anymore. The surgery was successful, the commander said. Dr. Kim removed the infected tissue. You will need months of recovery, but you will keep your leg. You will live. That is good news. It is. He paused. He seemed to be struggling with something. Words that did not come easily to a man like him. Your cubs. They escaped from the medical wing while you were in surgery. Yuna's heart tightened. What happened? They walked through half the station. Security teams were called. Everyone expected an attack. A massacre. He shook his head slowly. But they did not hurt anyone. They did not threaten anyone. They just walked right to the surgical bay. And then they lay down in front of the door. Yuna looked at Haru. He looked back at her, his golden eyes innocent. They stayed there for 12 hours, the commander continued. They would not move. They would not eat. They would not drink. They just waited. For you, Yuna's eyes filled with tears. She reached out and wrapped her arms around Haru's neck, pulling him close. He was too big for a proper hug, but he leaned into her anyway, his warm body pressing against hers. "Good boy," she whispered. "Such a good boy." The commander stood there, watching this moment. A human woman hugging a creature that was supposed to be a monster. A creature that was supposed to be incapable of love or loyalty or kindness. But here was the proof. Right in front of his eyes. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Yuna looked up at him. "What?" "I was wrong about them. About the Vorn. I thought they were just animals. Just killers. I thought nature could not be changed." He looked at the 3 cubs, now calm and peaceful around Yuna's bed. "But you changed them. Or maybe they were never what we thought they were in the first place." Yuna wiped her eyes. They just needed someone to love them. Someone to see them for what they really are. And what are they really? She smiled. "Family." The commander nodded slowly. Then he did something unexpected. He walked to the side of the bed and held out his hand toward Momi. The little Vorn sniffed his fingers carefully. Then she licked them, her rough tongue tickling his skin. For the first time since Yuna had met him, Commander Lee smiled. "The council has been discussing what to do with them," he said. "There were calls to send them to research facilities, to study them, to find out how a human could bond with Vorn." Yuna's hand tightened on Haru's fur. "And I spoke against it. I told them what I saw. What these cubs did while you were in surgery. How they refused to leave. How they would have died before abandoning you." "What did the council decide?" "They are yours, officially. The first legally registered Vorm companions in galactic history. They will stay with you, wherever you go." Yuna could not speak. The tears came faster now, streaming down her face. She pulled all 3 cubs close, burying her face in their fur. "Thank you," she managed to say. "Thank you." Commander Lee turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. "I have served this station for 20 years. I have seen the best and worst of every species in the galaxy. Humans, aliens, creatures of all kinds." He looked back at Yuna and her cubs. "I always thought humans were weak. Too soft, too emotional. That we survived, not because we were strong, but because we were lucky." He shook his head. "I was wrong about that too. Your species has something that no other species has. You make connections. You form bonds. You turn enemies into friends and strangers into family. That is not weakness. That is the greatest strength in the universe." He walked out, closing the door behind him. Yuna lay back on her pillows, surrounded by warmth. Haru was on one side, Duri on the other, Bomi curled up at her feet. The machines beeped softly. The lights glowed gently. Outside the window, stars shone in the endless black of space. She thought about the crash. About the cold. About the fear and the pain and the loneliness. She thought about the moment she first saw 3 pairs of golden eyes in the darkness of a cave. She had been so afraid. So sure that she was going to die. But she had not died. She had survived. And she had found something she never expected to find. A family. The galaxy called humans weak. Small and soft and fragile. Easy prey for the predators of the universe. But the galaxy was wrong, because strength was not about claws or teeth or size. Strength was about heart, about courage, about the willingness to love even when it was dangerous, even when it was foolish, even when everyone said it was impossible. Humans were not weak. They were the strongest species in the galaxy, and Yuna was proof. She closed her eyes and listened to the sound of 3 predators breathing softly around her. 3 killers who had become her family. 3 monsters who had shown more love and loyalty than most people she had ever known. She smiled. Tomorrow, she would start her recovery. Tomorrow, she would plan her future. Tomorrow, she would figure out what came next. But tonight, she was home. And she was not alone.